Alabama and Mississippi State and Penn State. And Huff joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Charles Huff, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How you guys doing? Doing great, man. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, thanks for it's been too long, and thanks for hanging out with us. Congratulations on the job. Look, I get that Southern Miss is a good job. You're in a good spot. You're in the heart of the Sun Belt, in the Sunshine States, tons of athletes, all of that. Wonderful community. We're down there all the time. But why was it time to make the move from Marshall to Southern Miss? Huff?
Well, I think, I've always said I'll move to the next job when the ability to sustain success is gone. And that doesn't mean that, a program is not supporting or whatever that may be. It just means that in order to be able to do what we kind of reached the mountaintop to do, the ability and what was going to need to be poured in and what was going to need to be brought in to sustain that level of success, there were other options to put ourselves in a better situation. The relationship I had or have had with Jeremy, in the past, their vision for the things that they were trying to infuse into the program with this new college landscape from a resource standpoint, from an NIL standpoint, facilities-wise, was much better. A lot of people look at it and say, well, why would you go to a 1-11 program, when you leave a championship program? It's not about the current state of the program. It's about where you think you can take it. And I think we can take this place to a really high level. I have a lot of familiarity with the state of Mississippi. Obviously, my time at Mississippi State, there's phenomenal people in this area. Football is important in the South. There's a ton of recruits within earshot of this campus. The location makes sense from a year-round recruitability standpoint. So there were just a lot of things that, poured into things. I think everyone always kind of says, all good things come to an end. I think we did a really good job at Marshall. They were great to us. But it was time. When you look at where college football is going, what you're going to need to be able to do to sustain success, we had to put ourselves in a better situation.
Charles Huff, the new head football coach at Southern Miss on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. This interview is brought to you by Spring Street Cigars in Hattiesburg. Beautiful place, great place to enjoy a cigar and a beverage right there in Hattiesburg. And the new Spring Street Cigars is open in Jackson, too, and it is a super cool cigar bar and lounge. All right, Huff, I feel like – so I follow you on Twitter, obviously, and y'all have done a good job. The program and the fan base needed some energy and electricity, so you brought that to the table. But I feel like y'all land a transfer every day. Do you know what number y'all are at right now as far as the transfers this year?
Yeah, we are at, I've got it right here. We're going to be at 49 and about, we're at 49. We'll be probably close to 60 when all this is said and done.
Wow. Okay, so, this is a total roster flip. And
yeah,
talk about that.
And yeah, I think, obviously where we are in college football, you can change and have immediate return on investment. The old way would have took 2 or 3 years to get a recruiting class in, and maybe you develop guys, and you kind of gradually improve. Well, now, and I think Indiana and Kurt Signetti have shown that you can get an immediate flip. I'm not sitting here saying we're going to go 11-1 or do whatever Indiana did, but we will be able to infuse immediate talent, immediate culture, immediate discipline into the program. So we're going to be able to completely change the roster. It's almost like the NFL. You take over a team and there's no salary cap.
Sure.
So you can go out and kind of revamp the roster the way you want it. That was a big piece of why I decided to come here, not looking at what the current situation was, not looking at what the current record or roster was, looking at the ability to make roster decisions, looking at the ability to recruit guys to a phenomenal, campus and facility and area of the country. So we're going to be close to 60. We may have maybe less than 15 or so, players from the old Southern Miss team that we'll bring in, and then we'll have another, 10 to 12 high school guys that we'll bring in to kind of complete our 85. But that was the mindset. The mindset was, can we go there and completely flip this roster, resource-wise? The ability to go out and attract the right talent. I think us having success at the other place kind of gives us a little bit of validity. I tell people all the time, and this is not me being boastful or cocky, I'm working on practication. I'm not working on theory. I'm working on things that I know have worked in this league at this level. From a resource standpoint, I know what is needed. I know the type of players you need to win in this league. Now, does that mean we sprinkle fairy dust over these guys and they go out and play perfect? No, we still have to coach and develop and get them to do what they're supposed to do. But from my experiences at the other place, I know what it takes to build a successful program in the Sun Belt.
Charles Huff, with head coach for the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, he's going to bring in 60-plus transfers and totally flip the roster for Southern Miss. Had a great run at Marshall and was with Saban and Alabama and MSU and Penn State with Franklin. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. So what's your approach on being able to get that many guys and get the cohesiveness and the chemistry? How do you expedite that process now in college football, like today through Labor Day when y'all face Mississippi State?
Yeah, it's a process, and our process and my thought process as we go through this is the first thing you have to do is you have to give everyone in the program a chance to conform. Right? You got to give them a chance to conform. You can't assume that just because they play college football at a good university that they know what discipline means, what accountability means, what a standard is, and those type of things. And that's not a knock to any other coach. That's just, you got to give people a chance to conform to your ways.
Sure.
Right? So you also have to give kids a chance to conform to your schematical implementation, right? Our schemes, our football, how we run things, the fundamentals, the techniques that we teach. Doesn't mean that what they've learned or what they know is right or wrong, just what we do, right? So once you give them a chance to conform holistically, hey, this is how we, conduct ourselves. This is how we play the game. This is how we play offense, defense, special teams. Then you have to make a decision. Okay, are they going to be able to create value for themselves and the university? That means a player may be great, he may conform, but if he's a wing T quarterback, we don't run wing T.
Right.
Okay, so you got to move him on, right? So it's not a magic formula, right? You got to move him on, and you got to be honest with the kid and say, hey, look, you're not going to have an opportunity to play as much because of whatever it may be. Right. Once you do that, then you start bringing in the guys that fit your culture, your schemes, your discipline and all those things. We use, obviously with us bringing so many players with us from the other place, we use our players to determine who fits our culture. So obviously we bring the kids in, we watch the film, hey, here's a great X, Y, and Z player. All right, when he goes and hangs out with our players, they have a role. Does he fit our culture? Coach, he's a great player. He doesn't fit our culture. Okay, we don't take him. Coach, he's a great player. He'll fit in great. Okay, once you do that, then you start forming the team. And that's where I think a lot of coaches in today's, way of college football are going to have to make some quick decisions, right? How do you form a team in 6 months? Obviously, you got to get to know each other, so you got to spend time with them. We've changed how we, vacation. Typically, as a coach, you leave for the whole month of July, take a deep breath with your family, come back, and you get rolling. Well, we don't do that anymore because we can't be away from the guys for a full month when you only have really 2 months to get ready to play. So we've changed some things internally. We've changed some things of how we, help the players to get to know each other. And then what you have to finally decide is, okay, it's not about having the best players in the boat. It's about having the right players in the boat. And how do you decide that? When you're going through the recruiting process, for us, if a kid's starting the conversation about NIL, he's not the right player for us. We don't have a ton, right? So if you're looking for, Bugattis, Lamborghinis, and those type of things, well, you may be a great player, but you're not going to be a great player for us because we don't have those things. Sure. Right? But if a player is looking for an opportunity, a player is looking for the ability to create value for himself, he wants to be coached hard, he believes in discipline, and he believes in being successful on and off the field, well, then now we can help those type of players. Do we have some NIL? yeah, we're in a really good spot for our level, right? But we're not going to be able to compete with Ole Miss. We're not going to be able to compete with Mississippi State from an NIL perspective. So those kids will never be able to fit here because he's always going to be looking for his paycheck. So once you kind of do that and you make sure that the staff understands those things, you make sure the players understand those things, and then you get to the point where you get a group of like guys that have the right mentality that can go out and execute on Saturdays.
He is Charles Huff, head football coach for Southern Miss, year one, totally flipping the roster. He joins us on the Out of Bounds show, brought to you by Spring Street Cigars in Hattiesburg. Okay, Huff, who is your general manager that's helping you? I can't imagine what kind of screens and whiteboards and all sorts of things y'all got going on. But who's your general manager that you're working with every day to put the roster together, Huff?
Yeah, Reed Grable is my general manager. He's a guy that has been with me for a really long time. He started out as a graphic intern for us in the recruiting world our first year at Marshall, and he kind of worked his way up into the DPP role. He kind of worked his way up into the recruiting coordinator role. And let's be honest, right? Everybody has this pretty term of GM, but unless you're Belichick and you got Lombardi or you got Nagy, you really have a director of recruiting, right? So let's just call it what it is. Now, the way we do it is we have some very strict parameters on player profile. I learned this when I was with Coach Saban. Every position has a well-defined physical, emotional, mental, the whole nine makeup. If they are a certain position and they are not a certain height, weight, and speed, we don't take them. Because I still think to the core of college recruiting, you have to have those parameters. What I think has happened now is when you infuse money into that, it's okay, who's the best player we can buy? And you start to take players that don't necessarily fit your parameters. We still stick to those parameters. Coach Saban taught us, hey, if you're a corner, you got to be, 6'1" plus, you got to be 200 and some odd pounds, you got to be able to play man, play the ball in the deep part of the field, and tackle. Obviously, we don't get 6'1" corners here, but we've converted that to our level. And what happens is we eliminate missing. And that's where, Coach Saban said it on, ESPN, a couple months ago. You can pay the wrong player. Well, the way you pay the wrong player is you throw out this bunch of money because he's a quote-unquote good player. He doesn't fit your parameters, so he can't play your schemes. He's not flexible in your schemes. So that's what we do. Obviously, we don't have the money to go out and pay the best whatever, so we stick to our parameters. So that way, we always have the right guys in our building for the schemes that we run. And I think that's what's helped us have, sustainable success. Some programs, they can just go out and spend $40 million and next year spend 40, next year spend 40. We don't have that ability, so we have to be a little more creative in how we do things.
He's generated a ton of excitement in Hattiesburg. Head football coach at Southern Miss, Charles Huff, joining us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. All right, I know this has been talked about forever, but you coached under Nick Saban. And it may have been what you just described as far as the strict parameters and the player profile that was developed and cultivated over his tenure at Alabama. But if you could pinpoint one thing, Huff, on why he was so successful for so long, what would it be?
Yeah, it would be just discipline and consistency. That's the thing that everyone talks about. But you want to talk about a man that was so consistent in his process, everything. I tell people all the time, he used to wear the same clothes every day of the week. Like Monday, he'd wear black pants. Tuesday, he'd wear blue pants. Wednesday, he'd wear gray pants. Thursday, he'd have on the brownish color pants. Friday, he'd have on a suit. Every single day. It was almost like clockwork. And it's obviously not that he doesn't have money to buy new clothes. It's just the consistency in his lifestyle with everything that he talked about with the players, the discipline to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Those are the things. I'll never forget, we were there. It was the COVID year. And obviously he got COVID. Sark's taking over for the team. I believe we're playing Auburn. And we have a Friday team meeting. Well, every Friday he wears a blazer and coat and tie. So he's at home. He's going to Zoom into the team meeting on Friday because he's got COVID. So the coaches, we're all sitting there saying, there's no way he's going to show up on this Zoom with a coat and tie on sitting in his living room. So we're taking bets. There's guys going around saying, bet you he does, bet you he doesn't. Sure enough, screen pops on. He's got his coat and tie on sitting in his living room.
Unbelievable.
Because the consistency of his routine didn't change because he was at home with COVID. It was the consistency of the routine. Today's Friday. When I have a team meeting on Fridays, I wear a coat and tie. We go to the hotel. So those little things that I took from him, not from hey, we run this kind of defense or that kind of defense. It was strictly the consistency and discipline in your routine. And that's everything. Your schedule, your way you recruit, how you talk to the players, how they work out, all of those things.
Man, Huff, we got to do this again. Congratulations. I mean, I didn't get close to everything that I wanted to get in and talk about, but Charles Huff, the excitement's there, the energy's there in Hattiesburg, new head football coach at Southern Miss. Huff, thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you soon. Let's do this again soon, okay?
Thank you guys, man. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thanks, Huff. Charles Huff on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. He's going to bring in 60-plus players. You know who they play first game at The Rock. He'll host Jeff Levy and Mississippi State. Southern Miss, MSU, Labor Day weekend at The Rock. Back for hour number 3.